The massive alien ship drifted silently at the edge of Earth's solar system, like a dark mountain floating in space. Ambassador Zexthal stood before the viewing window watching the small blue planet that orbited the yellow star. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he studied the world that would soon join the Galactic Council. The process was always the same across the galaxy. First contact followed by a demonstration of power, then peaceful surrender and integration. In 10,000 years, no species had ever refused this generous offer. Ambassador, the scanning is complete, said his aide Kithara as she approached with a datapad. The dominant species calls themselves humans. They have achieved basic space travel and nuclear weapons, but nothing more advanced. Their technology is roughly 3,000 years behind Council standards. Zexthal nodded his elongated head. The Vorthon Empire had been integrating primitive worlds for centuries. These humans would be grateful for the protection and advancement the Council offered. Initiate first contact protocols. Standard peaceful approach. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the command chair of the Earth Defense Station watching the massive object on his screens. The thing was bigger than anything humans had ever built. It just appeared 3 days ago and had been sitting there doing nothing. Every government on Earth was holding emergency meetings while the military prepared for the worst. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lieutenant Ben Parker from the communications station. "It's coming from that ship out there." "Put it through," Jake said as he straightened in his chair. The main screen flickered and showed an alien face that looked like a mix between a bird and a lizard. The creature had smooth gray skin and 4 dark eyes that seemed to study everything at once. "Greetings, primitive beings of the third planet," the alien said in perfect English, though its voice sounded like it was speaking through water. "I am Ambassador Zexthal of the Galactic Council. We have come to offer you membership in our peaceful alliance of worlds. You will submit to Council authority and in return receive protection and technological advancement." Jake felt his jaw tighten. Submit. The word hit him like a slap across the face. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We appreciate your offer, but Earth doesn't submit to anyone. If you want to talk, we can discuss terms as equals." There was a long pause. Zexthal's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. Perhaps there was an error in translation. "We are offering you the chance to join the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Surely you understand the wisdom of accepting our protection?" "We understand just fine," Jake replied, keeping his voice steady. "But Earth stands free or not at all. We'd rather die fighting than live on our knees." On the alien ship, Zexthal turned to his aide with confusion written across his face. Did he just threaten to die rather than accept our generous offer? "It appears so," Ambassador Kithara said, checking her translator device. "Perhaps this species is more primitive than we thought. They seem to prefer violence over reason." Zexthal had encountered stubborn species before, but none had ever spoken of preferring death to Council membership. The standard protocol was clear. When peaceful integration failed, a demonstration of superior power usually convinced reluctant worlds to reconsider. "Prepare the asteroid demonstration. These humans need to understand what they're dealing with." Commander Lisa Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the USS Defiance as the alien ship moved toward the asteroid belt. Her ship was one of 12 human vessels that had taken position between Earth and the aliens. They were hopelessly outmatched, but nobody was backing down. "Ma'am, the alien ship is positioning itself near the large asteroid designated Alpha 7, reported her tactical officer. "It's the one that's about 5 miles across," Lisa nodded. Whatever the aliens were planning, it wouldn't be good. "All ships maintain position but be ready to move fast." The alien ship stopped near the massive rock. A beam of pure energy shot out from its hull and struck the asteroid. The 5-mile-wide chunk of rock and metal simply vanished in a flash of light. Not destroyed or broken apart, but completely gone as if it had never existed. "Jesus Christ," whispered someone on the bridge. Every human who saw the display felt the same cold shock. The aliens could erase anything they wanted with a thought. Back on the alien ship, Zexthal waited for the inevitable surrender call. The asteroid demonstration had never failed to bring immediate compliance. But instead of surrender, the humans did something unexpected. They began moving their ships into attack formation. Ambassador Kithara said with growing alarm, "The human vessels are not retreating. They appear to be preparing for combat." "Combat," Zexthal repeated the word like it was something foul. "Against a ship that just vaporized an asteroid. Are they completely mad?" Lieutenant Ben Parker's voice crackled over the comm system as he intercepted alien transmissions. "Captain, I'm picking up their internal communications. They're saying something about humans being a warrior species. They sound scared. Jake Morrison smiled grimly. Good. Fear was something he could work with. Open a channel to all Earth forces. It's time to show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens our home. The message went out across every human ship and station. Earth would not surrender. Earth would not submit. If the aliens wanted a fight, they would get one, but it wouldn't be the easy victory they expected. Zexthul stared at his screens in disbelief. The human ships were spreading out in what could only be described as attack positions. Their weapons were primitive, but they showed no sign of backing down, even after seeing the asteroid demonstration. In all his years of first contact, he had never encountered a species that responded to overwhelming power, with aggression instead of submission. Contact the Council immediately, he ordered. We need to classify this species as hostile. These humans don't seem to understand reason or fear. They actually want to fight us. As his aide sent the message to Council headquarters, Zexthul couldn't shake the feeling that something had gone terribly wrong. The humans were supposed to surrender after seeing their power. Instead, they looked ready to die fighting. What kind of species chose death over the safety of Council protection? On Earth, the governments were united for the first time in human history. Every nation put aside their differences to face the alien threat. President Kate Sullivan addressed the world from the White House while similar messages went out from every capital. Citizens of Earth, she said, looking directly into the camera, we face a choice today. We can bow down to these aliens and live as their subjects, or we can stand up and fight for our freedom. I know what humanity chooses. We choose to fight. The alien ship began moving away from the asteroid field back toward the edge of the solar system. But Jake Morrison knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The aliens had shown their strength and humans had shown their defiance. Now everyone would see what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. War was coming and Earth would be ready. Admiral Veltar stood in the command center of the Council Warfleet, watching 500 ships prepare for battle. Each vessel carried weapons that could crack a planet and shields that could stop a star. Never in galactic history had the Council needed such overwhelming force for a single-world integration. But the reports from Ambassador Zexthul were clear. These humans were unlike any species they had encountered. Admiral, the fleet is ready, reported his tactical officer. All ships report weapons charged and shields at maximum. The human homeworld should surrender within hours of our arrival. Veltar nodded but felt uneasy. His species, the Kalani, had been among the first to join the Council 3,000 years ago. They had seen the wisdom of peaceful integration immediately. But these humans seemed to lack basic survival instincts. Maintain standard formation. We'll give them one final chance to surrender. Before we begin orbital bombardment, on Earth, General, Alex Hayes stood in the war room deep beneath the Pentagon, surrounded by screens showing the incoming alien fleet. Every satellite and telescope pointed toward space had detected the massive armada approaching Earth. The numbers were terrifying, but Alex had fought impossible odds before. The difference was, this time, the entire human species was counting on him. General, the alien fleet will reach Earth orbit in 6 hours, reported Colonel Rick Davis. Our entire defense force is ready. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier on the planet is prepared to fight. Alex studied the tactical displays. Humanity had 150 ships compared to the aliens' 500. Human weapons were primitive projectiles and missiles, while the aliens had energy beams that could vaporize asteroids. On paper, this wasn't a battle, it was an execution. But humans had never been good at following what the papers said. President Kate Sullivan entered the war room with Dr. Sam Mitchell close behind. The scientist carried a briefcase containing their one hope. 3 weeks of studying the debris from the first alien encounter had yielded something unexpected. Human technology was crude, but human minds worked differently than alien ones. General, we've made a breakthrough, Dr. Mitchell said, opening his briefcase. The alien technology runs on quantum processors that follow predictable patterns. We can't match their power, but we might be able to confuse their targeting systems. Explain it in simple terms, Doc, Alex said. Their computers think in straight lines. Human tactics don't follow straight lines. If we can be unpredictable enough, their advanced systems might not be able to compensate fast enough. Alex smiled. Unpredictable was something humans excelled at. Get that information to every ship commander. Tell them to throw out the rule book and fight like their lives depend on it. The alien fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system like a metal storm cloud. Admiral Veltar immediately opened communications, expecting the usual immediate surrender. Instead, the human response came from Captain Jake Morrison aboard the lead Earth defense ship. "This is Earth Defense Command." Jake's voice crackled over the alien communication system. "You are not welcome here. Turn around and leave our system or we will destroy you." Veltar's translator must have malfunctioned. A species with primitive weapons was threatening to destroy a council fleet. "Human vessel, you are vastly outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and your people will be treated with mercy. The only mercy Earth offers is a quick death if you run away now." Jake replied, "If you want our world, you'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands." The alien admiral felt something he had never experienced before. These humans weren't just refusing to surrender, they were actively threatening him. What kind of insane species fought when they had no chance of winning? "All ships advance to bombardment range," Veltar ordered. "These primitives need to learn the price of defying the Council." Colonel Rick Davis led the first wave of human fighters as they launched from hidden bases across the Earth. His squadron of 30 pilots faced off against alien ships the size of cities. The smart thing would be to run. The human thing was to attack. "All wings, this is Dragon Leader." Rick spoke into his comm. "Remember what they taught us. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Find their weak spots and hit them with everything we've got." The human fighters screamed toward the alien fleet at impossible speeds, where alien pilots followed careful formations and safety protocols. Human pilots flew like their ships were disposable. They dove between alien vessels using the massive ship's own bulk to block incoming fire. They fired missiles at point-blank range and used their ships as guided bombs when their weapons ran out. "Admiral." Veltar watched in horror as his perfectly organized fleet was thrown into chaos by a handful of primitive fighters. Human pilots were doing things that violated every rule of space combat. They flew damaged ships on collision courses with his vessels. They ejected from destroyed fighters only to detonate hidden explosives as his ships moved to investigate the wreckage. "Admiral, we're taking heavy casualties," his tactical officer reported with panic in his voice. "The human fighters are using suicide tactics. They're ramming our ships and detonating their reactors." "Impossible," Veltar said. "No rational species sacrifices their pilots for minor tactical advantages." But the evidence was on his screens. Human after human chose certain death if it meant damaging even one alien ship. They fought like every single pilot was willing to die for their world. The concept horrified the alien admiral who came from a culture that valued individual life above all strategic concerns. Sergeant Amy Foster coordinated the ground defenses from her command post in what used to be Detroit. The aliens had announced they would demonstrate their power by destroying one human city. Amy's job was to make sure that demonstration cost them dearly. "All units hold your fire until they're directly overhead," she ordered. "Let them think we're defenseless, then hit them with everything at once." The alien bombardment ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, confident that no ground force could threaten a vessel protected by energy shields. What they didn't expect was an entire city turned into one massive trap. Every building hid missile launchers, every street corner concealed gun positions, and every basement contained enough explosives to level a city block. When the alien ship reached optimal bombing altitude, Amy gave the signal. Detroit erupted like a volcano. Thousands of missiles launched simultaneously, while electromagnetic pulse bombs scrambled the alien ship's systems. The vessel crashed into the ruins of the city, but not before its crew sent a terrified message to the fleet above. The humans, the pilot's last transmission said, they turned their own city into a weapon. They destroyed themselves just to kill us. Admiral Veltar received casualty reports that made no sense. His advanced fleet was being mauled by a species that should have surrendered hours ago. The humans fought with mathematical impossibility. They treated their own deaths as acceptable losses if it meant inflicting damage on the Council fleet, Admiral. His communication officer said with a trembling voice, "We're receiving surrender offers from 12 worlds in the Outer Rim. They're asking for human protection against Council forces." The revelation hit Veltar like a physical blow. Other species were watching this battle. Worlds that had been under Council control for centuries were seeing humans fight the impossible, fight and wondering why they had never tried the same thing. The war for Earth had become something far more dangerous. It had become an example that threatened the very foundation of Council power across the galaxy. 3 months into the war, engineer Laura Kim worked 18 hours a day in the underground laboratory beneath what used to be Los Angeles. Around her, dozens of human scientists and engineers did something the Galactic Council thought impossible. They were reverse engineering alien technology, faster than any species in galactic history had ever managed. Where other civilizations needed decades to understand Council science, humans were doing it in weeks. "Laura, we got another breakthrough," called out Dr. Jim Roberts from across the lab. "The alien shield generators use a harmonic frequency pattern. If we can match it, we can make their own shields work against them." Laura wiped the sweat from her forehead and walked over to examine his work. 3 months ago, she had been designing computer chips for smartphones. Now she was building weapons that could punch through energy barriers designed by a civilization thousands of years more advanced than Earth. The difference was desperation and the human ability to take insane risks. "Test it on the captured alien fighter," she said. "If it works, we can retrofit our entire fleet in a week." The captured fighter sat in the middle of the lab, surrounded by human engineers who treated it like a puzzle to be solved. Unlike alien scientists who followed careful protocols and safety procedures, humans simply took things apart to see how they worked. When the first test exploded and killed 2 engineers, the remaining humans just moved the next test further away and kept working. Captain Chris Turner stood on the bridge of the USS Retribution, watching his crew prepare for another impossible mission. His ship was a human cruiser that had been rebuilt using stolen alien technology. The energy weapons bolted to its hull shouldn't have been compatible with human power systems, but somehow the engineers had made it work. The result was a vessel that could hurt Council ships while remaining too small and fast for them to catch. "Captain, we're approaching," the alien supply convoy reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Nancy Wells. 3 transport ships with 1 escort vessel. "Should be easy pickings if we hit them fast and run." Chris nodded. For 3 months, human ships had been attacking Council supply lines using tactics that made no sense to alien military doctrine. Where Council fleets fought honor-bound battles with clear rules of engagement, humans attacked from ambush and disappeared before the enemy could respond. They targeted supply ships, medical vessels, and communication relays. Anything that would weaken the alien war effort. "Take us in, Nancy," Chris ordered. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win." The Retribution dropped out of hyperspace directly behind the alien convoy. Before the escort ship could react, human missiles slammed into the transport vessels. The supplies meant to feed the Council fleet for a month burned in space, while the human ship vanished back into hyperspace, leaving only wreckage behind. On the Council command ship, Admiral Veltar received another report of human attacks on his supply lines. In 3 months, the humans had destroyed more Council logistics than the previous century of minor rebellions combined. But that wasn't what terrified him most. What terrified him was how quickly humans learned from each engagement. Admiral, his aide, reported, "Intelligence shows the humans are adapting their tactics after every battle. They study our responses and change their methods faster than we can counter them. It's as if they treat warfare as a science experiment." Veltar stared at the tactical display showing dozens of red marks where human raids had struck his forces. Each attack was different. Each one exploited a weakness the humans had discovered in the previous battle. Fighting them was like fighting an enemy that evolved in real time. The most disturbing reports came from his shipboarding teams. Private Danny Walsh had been captured 3 weeks ago during a failed human assault on a Council supply depot. The young human soldier was being held in the alien ship's detention center when something impossible happened. He managed to override the ship's computer systems using nothing but his own neural patterns. "The human brain," explained the alien scientist studying Danny's case, "generates electrical patterns that our AI systems interpret as valid authorization codes. It's completely random, but their chaotic thought processes somehow match our security protocols." Within hours of the discovery, human boarding teams began carrying devices that could hack alien computers simply by thinking at them. What should have been humanity's greatest weakness, their primitive and unpredictable minds, had become a weapon that turned alien technology against itself. Lieutenant Maria Santos led one such boarding team onto the Council destroyer Vengeance after human fighters had disabled its engines. Her squad of 12 Marines faced over 300 alien crew members in the corridors of a ship designed to be impregnable. The smart thing would be to try to take prisoners and gather intelligence. The human thing was to head straight for the reactor core. "All teams, this is Santos." She spoke into her comm as laser fire filled the alien corridors around her. We've got maybe 10 minutes before their backup arrives. Plant the charges and get out. But if we can't make it out, we go down with the ship." Her words were picked up by alien communication systems and broadcast to every council ship in the area. The aliens heard a human officer calmly planning her own death if it meant destroying their vessel. The psychological impact was devastating. How could you fight an enemy that treated suicide as just another tactical option? Maria's team fought through the alien ship using weapons and tactics that horrified the council crew. Where aliens used energy weapons with surgical precision, humans used explosive rounds that punched through bulkheads and turned every corridor into a death trap. When they ran out of ammunition, they used knives and bare hands. When those failed, they used grenades with the pins pulled as clubs. The human Marines reached the reactor core with 30 seconds to spare before council reinforcements arrived. Maria looked at her remaining team members, 5 humans who knew they weren't going home. "Boys, it's been an honor. Let's make this count." The explosion destroyed not just the council destroyer but also damaged 3 nearby ships in the blast. Maria Santos and her team became another entry in the growing list of humans who chose death over defeat. But their sacrifice achieved something more important than just destroying one ship. It sent a message to every species in the galaxy that humans would literally blow themselves up rather than accept defeat. The message was received by the slave worlds of the Outer Rim who had lived under council rule for centuries. For the first time in their history, they saw a species that refused to be conquered. Underground resistance movements began studying human tactics and wondering why they had never tried the same desperate measures. Admiral Veltar found himself fighting a war on 2 fronts. The humans continued their impossible resistance while other species across the galaxy began questioning council authority. Reports came in daily of rebellions and uprisings inspired by humanity's example. The war that was supposed to end with Earth's quick surrender had become a galactic revolution. But the worst part was how the humans kept getting stronger. Every captured council ship became a human weapon. Every alien technology they encountered was reverse-engineered and improved upon. After 3 months of fighting, humans were no longer primitive. They were becoming dangerous. News of the human war spread across the galaxy like wildfire through dry grass. On the mining world of Kepler-7, the Jalari workers gathered in secret to watch bootleg recordings of human battles. For 300 years they had mined precious metals for their council overlords, accepting their fate as conquered people. But watching humans fight, impossible odds and win made them question everything. They had been taught about council power. "Look at them," whispered Foreman Grix to his fellow workers as they watched footage of human fighters ramming alien battleships. "They're outnumbered 100 to 1, but they keep fighting. Why did we never try that?" Similar conversations were happening on dozens of worlds across council space. The Kalari resistance movement that had been crushed centuries ago began reforming in the shadows. They studied human tactics and started asking dangerous questions. If a primitive species like humanity could stand up to the council, why couldn't older, more advanced civilizations do the same thing? On the council, flagship Admiral Veltar faced his worst nightmare. The human ship designation USS Fury had somehow penetrated his fleet's defensive perimeter and was heading straight for his command vessel. But this wasn't a suicide attack. This was something far worse. The humans wanted to board his ship. "All security teams to defensive positions," Veltar ordered as proximity alarms screamed throughout his vessel. "Prepare for boarding action." The words felt foreign in his mouth. The council had never faced boarding actions before. Their enemies always surrendered or died at a distance. The idea of hand-to-hand combat inside a starship was something from primitive history books, not modern. Warfare Corporal Ryan Torres led the human assault team as they cut through the alien ships, hull using stolen council cutting tools. His squad of 20 Marines had volunteered for a mission that every tactical computer said was impossible. Board an alien flagship, kill the command crew, and capture the ship's database. The fact that none of them expected to survive was just another detail in the mission briefing. "Remember, boys, the aliens have never fought hand-to-hand before," Ryan said as they prepared to breach the hull. "They're bigger than us and they've got better weapons, but they've never had someone try to kill them with a knife. Use that fear." The human boarding team exploded into the alien ship like a hurricane of violence and chaos. Where alien security forces expected orderly ranged combat, they encountered humans who preferred to fight up close where their size advantage meant nothing. Ryan's team used smoke grenades and flashbangs to create confusion, then attacked with weapons that horrified the alien crew. Combat knives and pistols might have been primitive compared to alien energy weapons, but they worked just fine when fired point blank into alien faces. The psychological impact was devastating. Council security forces had trained for thousands of scenarios, but none of them involved humans jumping out of smoke clouds with blades in their hands. Admiral Veltar watched his security feeds in growing horror as humans carved through his crew like they were made of paper. These weren't soldiers following military doctrine. They were predators who treated violence as a natural extension of their bodies. When their guns ran out of ammunition, they used them as clubs. When their knives broke, they used the pieces as throwing weapons. Admiral, the humans have reached Deck 7, his tactical officer reported with panic in his voice. Security teams are falling back on all fronts. They're requesting permission to use heavy weapons. Denied, Veltar said immediately. Heavy weapons will damage the ship's systems. Continue defensive operations. But the humans had already anticipated this response. They were counting on the aliens being too civilized to risk damaging their own vessel. It was another example of human thinking that made no logical sense but worked perfectly in practice. Back on Earth, intelligence officer Elena Rodriguez sat in a bunker beneath the ruins of Washington, studying intercepted alien communications. What she had discovered would change everything humans thought they knew about the Galactic Council. The aliens weren't the benevolent peacekeepers they claimed to be. They were sophisticated conquerors who had enslaved hundreds of worlds through fear and intimidation. General Hayes, you need to see this, Elena said as she handed him the translated documents. The Council hasn't just conquered these worlds. They've been strip mining them for resources and using the populations as slave labor. Every world that joined them voluntarily was threatened with total destruction if they refused. General Hayes read the reports with growing anger. The aliens had painted themselves as civilized protectors, while secretly operating one of the largest slave empires in galactic history. Earth wasn't just fighting for its own freedom. It was fighting to expose a lie that had kept hundreds of worlds in chains. Get this information to every resistance cell in the galaxy, Hayes ordered. Let them know what they're really fighting against. The revelation hardened human resolve even further. Every human soldier, pilot, and engineer now knew they weren't just defending Earth. They were fighting to free an entire galaxy from thousands of years of hidden oppression. The knowledge transformed desperate defense into righteous crusade. Dr. Paul Grant worked in the deepest levels of the military research complex on humanity's most terrifying weapon. The Consciousness Transfer Project had started as a way to preserve human knowledge in case Earth fell. It had evolved into something that gave alien intelligence officers nightmares. The upload process is stable, Dr. Grant reported to his military liaisons. We can transfer a human consciousness into a guided missile system. The volunteer retains all tactical knowledge and decision-making ability while controlling a weapon that can think and adapt in real time. The first volunteers for the program were pilots who had been shot down and soldiers who had been mortally wounded. They chose to donate their minds to weapons that would continue fighting even after their bodies had died. The concept violated every alien understanding of individual consciousness and the value of life. Lieutenant Todd Baker was the first human to volunteer for consciousness transfer after his fighter was destroyed in battle with alien interceptors. His uploaded mind was placed into a stealth missile that could think, plan, and modify its own programming to achieve maximum damage. The result was a weapon that combined human creativity with alien technology in ways that terrified Council strategists. This is Baker. His voice came through the communication system as his missile approached the alien formation. I can see their weak points. Adjusting attack pattern for maximum effect. It's been an honor serving with you all. The missile struck the Council flagship's reactor core with surgical precision. The explosion took out not just the target ship, but created a chain reaction that damaged the entire alien fleet. But what horrified the aliens most was the realization that humans had turned death itself into a weapon. Admiral Veltar received reports from across the galaxy that made his blood run cold. Human tactics were being copied by resistance movements on dozens of worlds. Species that had been peaceful for centuries were suddenly building weapons and training soldiers. The galactic stock markets were crashing as investors realized that Council military supremacy was no longer guaranteed. Admiral, his communication officer said with fear in his voice, we're receiving surrender requests from 17 worlds in the core sectors. They're asking for human protection against Council retaliation. The war had reached a tipping point. What started as the conquest of one primitive world had become a galactic revolution. And at the center of it all were humans who refused to accept that anything was impossible when their freedom was at stake. The final phase of the war began when humanity stopped defending and started attacking. Fleet Admiral Steve Carter stood on the bridge of the human flagship Vengeance, watching the largest fleet in human history prepare to jump to hyperspace. 200 ships built from captured alien technology and human ingenuity were about to do something no species had attempted in galactic history. They were going to attack the Council's fortress world of Centauri Prime. "Admiral, all ships report ready for jump," said Captain Julie Morgan from the tactical station. "The fleet is awaiting your orders." Steve looked out at the stars, knowing that many of the brave souls under his command would not be coming home. But that was the human way. They didn't fight because they expected to win. They fought because some things were worth dying for. "All ships, this is Admiral Carter," he spoke into the fleet communication system. "Today we take the fight to the heart of Council space. Today we show the galaxy what happens when humans go to war. Jump on my mark." The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system for the first time as conquerors rather than defenders. Behind them, orbital shipyards worked around the clock, building more vessels while resistance cells across the galaxy coordinated the largest simultaneous uprising in galactic history. On Centauri Prime Council Chairman Fexethel received reports that filled him with dread. 47 worlds had declared independence from Council rule in the past week. Military governors were reporting mutinies and sabotage on dozens more planets. The human disease of rebellion was spreading faster than his forces could contain it. "Chairman, the human fleet has been detected approaching our outer defenses," reported his military advisor. "Intelligence estimates they have 200 ships. Chairman Vexthal felt relief wash over him. 200 ships against the 1,000-vessel defense fleet protecting Centauri Prime. Finally, the humans would face impossible odds and learn the price of defying Council authority. "Deploy all defensive forces," he ordered. "It's time to end this human madness once and for all." What the Council didn't understand was that humans had spent months studying their defensive strategies. Where alien military doctrine called for layered defensive positions and coordinated fleet actions, human tactics focused on one simple principle: find the most important target and hit it with everything you had regardless of the cost. Captain Bob Miller commanded the human battleship Liberty as it led the charge against the Council's ultimate weapon. The Planet Killer was a massive space station capable of destroying entire worlds with a single shot. The Council had built it as the final deterrent against rebellion. They planned to use it to threaten Earth into surrender if the war continued. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire from the defense fleet," reported his weapons officer. "Hull integrity is down to 40% and falling." Bob looked at the massive weapon platform growing larger on his screen. The Planet Killer was charging its main weapon, preparing to fire on Earth. In 10 minutes, humanity's homeworld would be nothing but dust and debris. Unless someone stopped it. "All power to engines," Bob ordered. "Plot a collision course with that thing's main reactor. We're going to ram it." His crew didn't question the order. They were humans, and humans understood that sometimes the only way to win was to sacrifice everything for victory. The Liberty accelerated toward the Planet Killer as Council defense ships concentrated their fire on the human vessel. "This is Captain Miller to all human forces." Bob spoke into his communicator as his ship began to break apart around him. "If you want to kill our world, you'll have to go through us first. Remember this day. Remember that humans never surrender." The Liberty struck the Planet Killer's reactor core at maximum velocity. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away, as the Council's ultimate weapon tore itself apart in a chain reaction that consumed half their defense fleet. The sacrifice of one human ship and its crew had eliminated the greatest threat to human civilization. But the victory came at a terrible price. Admiral Carter received reports that 60% of his fleet had been destroyed in the battle. The surviving human ships limped away from Centauri Prime, leaving the Council fortress world in ruins, but knowing they had lost too many friends to call it a celebration. The Council command ship Admiral Veltar stared at the wreckage of his fleet with empty eyes. The humans had done the impossible again. They had destroyed a weapon designed to end rebellions by simply refusing to let it exist. The sight of that human ship ramming the Planet Killer would be broadcast across the galaxy within hours. "Admiral, his communication officer said quietly. "We're receiving surrender." Messages from the entire outer rim. 12 core worlds have declared independence. The Central Fleet is reporting mass desertions. The Galactic Council was collapsing not from military defeat, but from the simple realization that their authority was based on fear, and humans had proven that fear could be overcome by beings willing to die for their principles. Ambassador Zexthal found himself a prisoner aboard the human cruiser Justice after his ship surrendered without a fight. The alien diplomat who had started this war with promises of peaceful integration now sat in a human holding cell waiting to learn his fate. When Colonel Janet King came to speak with him, he expected threats or torture. Instead, she asked a simple question. Why did you think we would surrender? Zexthal looked at the human officer with his 4 eyes, trying to understand a species that made no sense. Because surrender was logical. We offered you protection, advancement, membership in the greatest civilization in galactic history. Why would any species choose death over such benefits? Janet sat down across from the alien ambassador and spoke words that would become legend throughout the galaxy. Because when you threaten our home, our families, our freedom. We don't see odds or technology or superior numbers. We see something that needs to die before it can hurt what we love. That's not savagery. That's what happens when humans go to war. The war officially ended 6 months later when the last Council holdouts surrendered to joint human and rebellion forces. But the real victory had happened the moment humans refused to kneel. The galaxy learned that freedom was not something that could be given or taken away. It was something that had to be defended by people willing to pay any price to keep it. 5 years after the war ended, Earth had become the center of a new galactic federation based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission. The former Council worlds were free to govern themselves, while human fleets patrolled space, ensuring that no new empire could rise to threaten galactic peace. Children across hundreds of worlds grew up learning the story of the species that refused to surrender. They learned that there were predators in the universe and then there were humans. The difference was that predators killed for survival, while humans killed for principle. And when humans went to war, the galaxy itself trembled in fear, knowing that some things were more dangerous than death. Some things were worth dying for.